Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. If you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And at this point in time, I'd like to introduce the members of the commission that are here this evening. To my right is Gina Morgenstein, an alternate on the commission, and to my left is Larry Zimbrowski, also an alternate on the commission. At the table to my left with town staff is Cynthia Kleist, excuse me, our recording secretary, and Casey Costello, our town planner. I'm Jim Syke, third chairperson of the commission. Before we get started, I do want to note that there's several items that will not be heard this evening that are not ready to be heard. The first one is number 2 on our agenda. It's a special permit retail store, 3 residential units at 902 Colony Realty and 900-902 South Colony Road. So that item will not be heard this evening. It's not ready to be heard. The next item that also will not be heard this evening is an old business item. It's a site plan parking lot for Gargano Limited Partnership at 9 and 11 First Street. And again, that one at the present time is not going to be heard this evening because it's not ready. We do have minutes, but we have several members that were at our July meeting that are not here this evening, so I'm going to dispense Casey with approving those minutes, which will lead us now to our first item on agenda. It's a public hearing. It's a special permit for a 60-foot flagpole for George Hart Infinity at 1076 South Colony Road. And Mrs. Morgenstein, if you would please read the legal notice and then note all correspondence for the record.
Correspondence. Oh, the legal was this one. Yep. Okay. So the legal notice, publication date July 26th and August 2nd. The Wallingford Planning and Zoning Commission will hold the following public hearings at their meetings of Monday, August 8th, 2016 at 7 p.m. in the Robert F. Parisi Council Chambers, Town Hall, 45 Main Street. Number 409-16, special permit for George Hart Infinity to allow a 60-foot high structure, flagpole, at 1076 South Colony Road. Number 10- just the first. Okay. And the correspondence, we have an interdepartmental referral notice of the proposed development. No comment from the departments. And correspondence regarding the special permit from George Hart Infinity, care of Joan Malloy. Gentlemen, this office has the following comments in regards to the referenced application. Number 1, please provide a rendering of what the pole will look like from Route 5 and from adjacent properties. Number 2, does the pole have to carry a certain wind load since it is so tall? Should you have any questions pertaining this, feel free to call Planning and Zoning. Okay. And then there's also an interdepartmental, no comment from other departments.
Thank you, Mrs. Morgenstein. And if the applicant would please introduce herself and begin her presentation.
Yes, for the record, my name is Joan Malloy. I'm an attorney with the firm of Laughlin Fitzgerald. My office is located at 150 South Main Street here in Wallingford, Connecticut, and I represent the applicant George Hart Infinity. As indicated by the legal notice, we did submit an application for a special permit for a 60-foot flagpole for the new Infinity dealership, which is going to be located at 1076 South Colony Road. The flagpole was shown on the original site plan, but there was a notation that additional approvals might be necessary. We submitted under Article 6 of the regulations, but we were contacted, or I was contacted by Casey last week, and she correctly noted that if you look at the definition of building in the zoning regulations, it specifically excludes flagpoles. Therefore, there was a question as to whether, based on Casey's position, we did not need to come in and get the permit. We'd gone through the whole process, advertised it. We felt it was best just to show up tonight and confirm with the commission that a permit is not required, in which case we do not need to proceed.
Okay, thank you. Casey, would you like to comment on this, please?
Sure, I'll just add sort of my concurrence with what Attorney Malloy said. After I generated my comments, I was sort of re-reviewing the application, and there was something in the back of my mind that maybe we spoke specifically to flagpoles. So in the definition section, it exempts flagpoles. So I don't think that they need an approval. So I would suggest that either you make a determination that they don't need an approval, or you can take an action.
Sure. I guess I just ask commission members, at least my opinion is if we have our town planner indicated that they do not need approval, that the flagpole is exempt, I would feel very comfortable with us simply making that determination.
I have no strong feeling.
Either way, I don't have any. It's a flagpole 60 feet high, and it's engineered by a professional as far as the flagpole and the foundation that it's on.
It's not the first one in town. There are
There's
other
others
ones.
that are there.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I guess at this point in time, I just ask for a consensus. Do we all agree that an approval on this application is not needed? And essentially, this is, I guess, a proper term would be exempt from our zoning. Is that correct, Casey?
That it doesn't require
It doesn't.
any
Yeah, it doesn't require approval. Do we all agree on that? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on. It's, next item is old business number 3. It's a site plan parking lot expansion for Butler Double Play Cafe, 320 Main Street, Yalesville. And again, Mrs. Morgenstein, if you would just simply note all
They are.
correspondence for the record.
So there's
And
a
if the applicant would please come forward and
Oh.
begin with a presentation.
The correspondence for the record, there is an interdepartmental referral, notice of proposed development, application number 223-16, dated 6/1/16. There is a Town of Wallingford letter, site plan application number 223-16, dated June 27th, 2016. There is a checklist. There is a letter from the Town of Wallingford Department of Public Utilities, Water and Sewer Division, dated July 25th, 2016. There is another correspondence with the town and the applicant, dated July 26th, 2016. An interdepartmental referral dated June 13th, and a Wallingford Fire Prevention Bureau memo dated July 15th, and a Town of Wallingford Department of Engineering memo from Rob Baltramitis dated August 3rd, 2016.
Thank you, Mrs. Morgenstein. And again, if the applicant would please introduce themselves and begin their presentation.
For the record, my name is Robert Ementea. I'm an engineer and land surveyor with Design Development Group, offices in Meriden. With me is the applicant, George Butler and Ken LeMay. The proposal is to expand the existing parking lot at the Double Play Cafe. We are pushing it to the back. We're putting processed stone down as opposed to pavement. It is a dustless surface, compacted. We have existing 44 spaces. We're adding 18 spaces. That's all we can add before we encroach on the 100-foot setback line from the edge of the Quinnipiac River. So the requirement for this building would require 62 spaces, but we're asking that we have a shared joint use of some of the spaces because you have two different businesses in here. You have the cafe and then you have an office. And the peak parking for the cafe is in the evening when the office is closed. So there'd be no detrimental effect as far as the parking goes on either business. out of the 62 spaces. Like I said, we need, by code, we would need 68 spaces. We have providing 62. Presently, there's 14, and we're asking for an additional 18 spaces. We've met some requirements for the, doing some landscaping in the area. And in the event that, as according to engineering, in the event that this new area is paved, we are going to be, would we be required to put a catch basin in at that point, and that's shown, a catch basin with a dry well. But until that time, basically the processed stone that's going on top of gravel fill would be free draining anyway. And then we have this area of grass area that's going to remain in its natural state behind it.
Okay, that's the extent of your presentation?
Yes.
Casey, questions? I know you had some comments.
Yep. So obviously in your packets, there were several communications back and forth and from other departments. There are still a couple of items that remain to be addressed, as I noted in my comments to you, that perhaps need to be discussed with the commission for some direction. The first is in regard to the nonconformities in the existing parking lot. When someone wants to do an addition or expansion or something of that nature, we require, because there is an actual expansion or addition, your regulations require that the entire parking lot be brought up to today's standards. There are some existing nonconformities on this lot. Some of the spaces are smaller than required by today's standards and things of that nature. However, this is a non-conforming situation, and they are not proposing any expansion of the building. Originally, they proposed a patio, but they subtracted that. So in this case, what they are really proposing to do simply improves the nonconformity. It's going to bring them closer to conformity. So the one recommendation that I would have, or item that I would suggest you discuss, is, whether or not you concur as to that the existing non-conforming lot remains as is, and also regarding the handicap parking space, the handicap accessible parking spaces. That is a little bit different of a situation than with the other non-conforming spaces because it is an ADA code compliance issue. So typically we do like to see those brought up to standard no matter what, and that would be relatively simple to do. The second is there's a difference of opinion between myself and the applicant's engineer regarding floodplain designation or what's required for floodplain designation. So I think at this point we do have multiple floodplain lines indicated on the map. I did speak to somebody from FEMA about it, and I did also look very carefully through our regulations again. And your regulation is based on the FIRM, which is the flood insurance rate map that's designated by FEMA. So unless FEMA approves, and the person I spoke to with FEMA essentially said the same thing. So unless FEMA approves a change, they're the only ones that can approve a change to the FIRM. And unless there is a change to that, your regulations say that that map is what stands. So I don't really think it has any major impact on them, but I would suggest that we discuss a little bit maintenance of the parking lot because it is going to be stone, which is better for drainage. But if there is flooding, and I think also just in regard to general maintenance, you have the green belt is noted. That is the line sort of right between the grass and the proposed parking lot. That's your required 100-foot green belt. That also is supposed to be protected. So I think we should just talk for a minute about maintenance of that.
Excuse me, Casey, would you point that out a little bit better for us here?
Sure. You see where the trees are behind the proposed parking area?
Yes, the 6 trees?
Yep. And there is a dashed line sort of through those, not the curved one, the straight one.
Where it shows limit of work, is that just that there's some limit of work is just above that? There's the dash line and then,
Yeah.
Here.
yeah, it's one or the other, I don't know which one. Oh, this one here. Oh, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, so maintenance of the parking lot, I just want to know that the applicant has a plan for that. The landscaping was taken care of. The engineering department has requested stormwater calculations, so I believe they're still waiting for those. I haven't heard back on those yet. I think the applicant did just hear about that last week. And the final, let me just make sure, comment that I have is the drive, you require a 24-foot drive aisle, and in the loop system in the back, it's only showing a 20-foot drive aisle. So I think you need to make a determination as to whether that's acceptable for you. Based on a different zoning regulation that we've been discussing, I've done a lot of research lately as to the potential for narrowing drive aisles, and I did not see a lot of support for that.
Okay. Thank you. Is that it, Casey?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. I guess I just have a couple quick questions. Just looking at your plans, I know you're talking about 18 spaces. One part of your plan says 18, another part says 20.
In the
And I
note-
assume it's just 18.
Yeah, correct. And the
Because
note,
what makes it a little confusing is, because in that drive aisle that Casey was referring to, that 20 feet, you have, you know, your timbers going there, which I assume
Yeah, that was-
those aren't going to be there.
no, that's not supposed to be there.
Okay. And, you know, Casey had mentioned the, you know, the parking lot, the existing parking lot, and, you know, bringing that, because it's, right now it's non-conforming, and I think I clearly understand that. And what you're looking to do is it's an improvement for you and for your customers, because you're going to create more parking, and I assume right now you're using the bank lot for some overflow at certain times, and they seem to be, I guess, be acceptable to that, but this is going to alleviate some of that. But as Casey mentioned with the, you know, with the handicap spaces, how many handicap spaces, Casey, are required? Is it 2 or 3?
I believe 2.
Two is required.
You're
We have
required
4.
I know there's 4 there.
6
Yeah, we can,
spaces.
that's existing.
Yeah, no, I
We
understand.
can bring those up to 2 to conform,
Yeah, I think that's, yeah,
which
it's
is
at
what I
least,
spoke with Casey about that before.
yeah, that's what I would like to see.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel because you're not, at least my opinion is because you're not adding on to the building,
Correct.
to require you to bring the whole parking lot up to standards. At least my opinion was I think would be overreaching.
Yeah.
But clearly, as our town planner pointed out, you know, with the ADA spaces, to have those compliant. And if you can get 3 spaces in there, that's great. If you can only get 2,
It is actually 3.
3 that are required? Okay. So with that, being able to get the, you know, having 3 spaces in there that's required. And then the other issue really is looking, as our town planner pointed out, that our engineer pointed out, as far as on that drive, you only have a 20-foot drive where, you know, we're requiring 24 feet. So I think that that's something we need to talk about and have addressed.
Okay, the only thing is, I mean, you're going in with a car that's going into 5 spaces, basically. A car coming out of either one of these can back out as if this was a dead end. Either one of those 2 were dead end. The amount of parking that's in that new parking area, if you treated that as a separate parking area, the dead end parking is only you're going in 5 spaces and you can come out of those spaces and turn and come back out again without really crossing over into the other bank of spaces. So, you know, I beg to differ with Casey on that, as far as the 20 feet.
Well, it's not only Casey, it's our town engineer.
Yeah, but
And-
does that, if that was
Excuse
a
me.
dead end, if that was a dead end parking, would that still be required?
I believe you're required to put a loop parking in there, is that correct? Yeah, see, I don't believe you could, Casey, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe you could put a dead-end parking there. Is that correct, Casey, or am I wrong?
Yeah, parking lots containing 40 or more spaces shall incorporate a loop circulation system to permit drivers to exit the parking area without the need for U-turns.
Okay, the only thing is that you're looking at this entire parcel and it's over the 40 spaces or whatever, but as it stands alone, you have the existing parking lot, which people can turn around completely in.
No, I mean, I understand
You
that,
know-
but again, those are the comments from our engineering department, and
What we could do, I mean, it would make, if you're allowing compact spaces, those spaces can be compact and we get an additional 4 foot.
yeah, but we don't allow compact spaces any longer. I think you probably have I think some of your existing spaces on your, in your parking field are compact, I believe that's the case, but we no
They
longer,
probably are.
yeah, we no longer allow compact spaces.
All right, then if we could probably move these parking places up, we can achieve the 24
Yeah,
foot.
that's what I think what
That's
we're
right.
looking for, is to achieve the 24 feet.
Yeah. Okay.
Other commission members with questions?
Yes, I have one. Where was there's not going to be any patio here, is that correct? So that would be.
Not proposed.
It's not on the table anymore. And then what's the difference between the FEMA floodplain and what's shown on the drawing?
Okay. We've done this an awful lot in towns, and there's a lot of disagreements in town. The FEMA elevation is based on, the FEMA location is based on the elevation of the 100-year flood. If you look at the FEMA map in this section where they did a detailed study, it's at elevation 48. So at the 100-year flood, the water surface elevation going through this area would be at elevation 48. Now, we've taken topography out here on the same datum, and you could see by the spot shots in this area, we're at elevation 50 plus. So it's our professional opinion that the line that we're showing, just running parallel to the Quinnipiac River Raceway there and labeled as 100-year flood per elevation 48 is correct. Now, when FEMA makes its maps, you're talking about a scale of 1 inch equals 2,000 feet. They don't do detailed studies throughout the whole thing as far as topography on all the areas of that. If you look at the map itself, you're taking a 2,000 scale map and then projecting it onto this map that we have here. The elevation of the FEMA map as per the FEMA line per the map is up over elevation 51, which when I spoke with Bob, the town engineer, I said, we'll show it on there and label it as such. But it's our professional opinion that the elevation 48 is what controls, and that's based on FEMA's study of the river. Now, if you need, we can get a letter from FEMA. We're not building, other than we're putting a parking lot. And parking lots are allowed in a floodplain because you're not changing the surface elevation of the ground. If you were raising it, then you would have to put compensatory storage someplace else. But we're not. The grade is going to be the same. So what happens is, what they're looking for, the effect is, if you get the 100-year flood, does your project change the elevation of that flood through that area? And with what we're doing, it doesn't. Because we're not changing the elevation.
Well, okay, there is a difference there, and I'd like to hear your side of it, Casey.
I don't agree with I don't disagree with most of what Mr. Amonte has said. However, your regulations specifically state that it's based on the map. So I don't disagree that the FEMA maps are not at this level of detail, and they have a process by which you can apply to them to change where your designated line is based on the actual elevation. So if a surveyor goes out and verifies the elevation in the field, they can then submit to FEMA for what's called a letter of map amendment to amend the map. And that would be the process by which to change the map. And again, your regulations are rather conservative in general in terms of how they interpret and where they designate floodplain, which is a good thing. It protects the floodplain. So my position would be, and it's section 6.5, if anybody wants to look in your regulations, and it references both the flood insurance study, which is what provides the elevations, and the flood insurance map. But it does say the area of special flood hazard includes any area shown on the firm, which is the map, as zones A and AE, including areas designated as floodway on a firm. So I think it would be easy enough because they have the information from a licensed engineer to apply for the LOMA. I think there's an online process that takes, hours or minutes to do. But I believe that's the process. I do agree that generally, as long as they are not changing any of the elevations, so not bringing in fill or anything, which the map doesn't show that they are, they don't need a floodplain permit. I just thought it should be noted, and I think it should be noted also that there is going to be a loose stone parking lot in there, so I think we should talk about, get some sort of maintenance explanation from the applicant. So they don't necessarily need to go through the change process. It's not going to have any major impact on whether or not they can do this, but if you want to change the line, according to FEMA, you need to apply for the map amendment.
Do you have any objection to?
We have no objection other than a timeline. I mean, if this is it's an allowed use in the floodplain, we're not putting a structure up, we can still apply for a LOMA, but I don't think that necessitates this commission waiting until we get a LOMA before it takes action on this in a favorable.
Well, I think that you are probably, my recommendation is going to be that you continue this application for a month anyhow, because the town engineer hasn't received stormwater management calcs, and I know that he was waiting for those. And we have some other comments that have been addressed, that have been discussed tonight that need to be addressed. So that might give them enough time to apply for the LOMA. But again, you could move forward without it.
We could move forward without the LOMA, but we still have, as far as moving forward on the application this evening, still we would need the comments from our engineering department.
Well,
That's my understanding.
That was sent out after I met with Bob Friday, and that was sent out over the weekend. So if he hasn't received it today, he'll have it by tomorrow, I know that. But I spoke with him, and as far as putting actually we put in a larger system initially, and he said, and I said, I think a dry well, catch basin with a 1,500-gallon dry well will suffice to take the storage capacity of what we're increasing here.
Okay. Well, I think as our town planner indicated, I don't believe this evening we'd be in a position to take action on this application, waiting for those comments from our engineering department, and also that would give you then time to make the adjustments to the plans that we talked about this evening as far as the parking field, the 24 feet, arranging that, making adjustments to the handicap spaces also. I'm not sure when you make adjustments to the handicap spaces, if you may lose, I'm not sure if you're going to lose a space, or obviously you're going to lose a handicap space. Yeah. Whether or not you lose another space or not, I think that's probably yet to be determined after you look at it.
Could that be approved with a condition?
Well, we couldn't approve it
it's not
as a condition of approval with the engineering, if your question is, could we approve this with the condition of approval that the engineering department reviews all your calculations on it, we couldn't do that, or at least I don't feel comfortable doing that. I believe we would like to see that, from our engineering department.
Mr.
Anyone
Chairman,
else?
I'd like to continue I've got another
Sure.
few questions here. And, well, just getting back to the FEMA thing, I think that, it's probably not material as far as, maybe you're correct on the 48 inches. I mean, 48
Elevation,
feet,
48.
elevation, but I don't know that because I'm not privy to that and we don't have a copy of that. So I'd like to get that resolved. And then also, I guess there's a note here, town permission to create a parking space over the sewer easement. I kind of feel uncomfortable about that. I mean, it's, if there's an easement there and then we have a parking lot.
Well, if you check with your town attorney, I mean, if we're going to be tabled, I can get another letter from the town anyway, but if you check with your town attorney, you have an easement on our property, which doesn't preclude us from using the property. It precludes us from obstructing your use of that easement. That's all it does. And we put a note on there specifically where the dumpsters are, that if the town had to dig up that pipe for whatever reason, that it's our responsibility to take the dumpster and move it and put it back again. The town doesn't have to do that. We're responsible for that. But as far as parking, there's also parking up in the front. If you look at the parking immediately to the north of the building in the front, there's existing parking over that easement. Now, if you check with your town attorney, I've never seen a town requiring the owner to go back and ask them for permission to park over an easement. And I've been doing this for 44 years, so it's new to me. But if you want it, it's gonna be tabled, I would request that you get a letter from your town attorney to that effect.
Casey, would you like to-
Otherwise, we'd be required to put something on the land records,
Yeah.
which doesn't make sense.
Casey, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, typically, it depends on what the conditions of the easement are, that if there is an emergency, right, they do have certain rights to get in there, and it's sort of at your own risk. But I did check with the Water and Sewer Division, and they have no objections per their easement to having parking spaces there.
space
So I don't think it's an issue. It's been resolved.
And then, on the state right-of-way over here, is there additional landscaping that's proposed there or nothing?
Where?
Right along Route
No,
150?
there's no work being done out there.
Nothing? Okay. And then the dumpster, I see you have the the chain link fence with the diagonal slats. And you are going to provide a 24-foot drive aisle in the back?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you. Gene, any questions?
Yeah, it just sounds to me like we need to wait a bit.
All right, this is not a public hearing. Would any members of the public like to speak on the application? If they would, please come forward, state your name and address. Seeing none, I guess I would, just bring it back to the, Casey, do you have any final comments?
No, I'm glad, I'm happy that they're expanding it and providing more parking for themselves, and that it is a limited site. If you go out and look out there, it looks like there's a lot of room, but because of some of the restrictions with the green belt and such, it is somewhat restricted or somewhat limited. So I'm happy to see they're doing it. We just need to bring it up to what our requirements are.
And again, just to recap, I think the major things we're talking about are the handicap spaces, bringing those in compliance, the 20-foot driveway, and then also getting comments from the engineering department concerning the runoff and all that. That would pretty much sum it up? Okay. That being said, we'll continue this to our next meeting. I'd entertain a motion to continue the application. And Casey, our next meeting is September...
Let me check. 14th.
So I'd entertain a motion to continue this
No, I'm
application.
sorry, 12th.
To
Sorry.
continue this to our September 12th meeting. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we table this application number 223-16 for 320 North Main Street, Yalesville, based on the comments that we had at this meeting until September 12th Planning and Zoning meeting.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Thank you, gentlemen. We'll see you next evening, next month. All right, Casey. Now, if you just take us through the rest of the agenda, keep in mind you're under the gun to get us out of here by 8 o'clock.
Sure. You have a bond release request from Connecticut Food Bank that I was out there today and I have some questions, so that is not quite ready to go forward. You have a 90-day map filing extension request. That's a subdivision that you approved at 530 Church Street. They're requesting an additional 90 days to file their map extension. I don't have any objections to that, but you do need to make a motion on it.
I'd entertain a motion for a extension request for a 90-day map filing extension for TWLC LLC. Do we have a motion on that?
Yes, so moved, Mr. Chairman, in accordance with what you said, but I guess I could restate that a 90-day map filing extension for TWLC-LLC, and the location is 530 Church Street, Yalesville.
We have a motion. We have a second by Mrs. Morgenstein. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Moving on.
You had four administrative approvals. Since you've seen those, I'll let you ask questions if you have any.
I suspect if we had questions, we would have asked them before we agreed not to put it on the agenda.
ZBA decisions of July 18th. There was not a meeting in July, so there were no decisions. You have the legal notice for this month's meeting. The only one that I would point out to you perhaps is number 3, or draw your attention to, at 6 Country Way. It's a request for to re-subdivide a property that was part of a previous subdivision, and the owner wants to split it into 2 non-conforming lots. Apparently there was some representation made to them that they would be able to do that by whoever sold them the property. That is several years ago. That is not actually the case, but I do have some serious concerns about the potential for precedent there.
What subdivision is this, Casey?
Countryside East.
Okay. So just walk me through it. It was a large piece of property. It was then purchased, it was subdivided. So it was subdivided into a certain number of lots?
In several phases.
In several phases.
Some
So
of
this-
which were open space subdivisions and some of which weren't.
So this is and this lot happens to be an oversized lot.
Correct.
So there would be no hardship. If there is a hardship, the hardship would be a self-imposed hardship, correct? The way the property was subdivided.
That's my assertion.
So there wouldn't be any reason for granting a variance.
I
So
would
I-
agree.
Would take it that we would, I don't know if other members of the commission agree that we would at least state do we normally do that, or?
You,
How do we handle
per statute, you can file a report with the ZBA prior. That's why these are always on your agenda, because they have to be referred to you. So if you want to file a comment, you have the ability to do that. So, and you have done that in the past.
I guess it would just be my opinion that given the fact that if there is a hardship, that's a self-imposed hardship, when this, perhaps not by the people who own the lot today, but by the person who owned the property and subdivided the property, created perhaps a hardship. So whatever hardship there may be, it's self-imposed, so that wouldn't be a legitimate way to grant a variance. And
Agreed.
I don't know if other people are agreeable, but I think we should note that and make those comments to the ZBA.
Okay. Is there general
Yeah,
consensus?
I agree. Yeah.
I agree too.
Moving on.
Finally is your zoning enforcement log. As usual, I will look to you if you have any comments. You have several closed complaints and your typically long open enforcement log. Amy's been working very hard. We've been getting a lot of new complaints, which always happens this spring and summer.
Anyone have any questions on either just the complaints that were closed or just the complaints that remain open?
I'm good.
Seeing none, I think that perhaps brings us to our end of our agenda,
Yes.
or no?
Yes, there are 2 members of the public that are present. I don't know if they're looking to comment. I would advise the commission that if they are commenting, I believe it's in regard to a current court case, a current lawsuit, so I would not recommend that you make any comments.
Excuse me? Does it have anything to do with our agenda? The site plan for? Oh, that was a administrative approval. You could look at that site plan if you'd like. You can go to the town planner's office, and the town planner will be able to provide a site plan for you. I think, to me, I don't know what your question is, but I think it's probably more, because again, we generally don't, we're unlike the town council, we have public comment, a period.
I have a suggestion. Typically, if someone gives us something in writing, then we'll add it on for the next agenda as a discussion item. So if you want to submit something to me, we can put it on for next month as a discussion item.
Yeah, if you'd like to do that. But if you have a specific question on any of the items that were administrative approvals, if you want to, take a look at any of those plans, again, they're available at the town planner's office. So I would suggest and direct you to that. If there's something that you would like the commission to discuss at another meeting, I think I would recommend that you follow the direction that that Casey has, that include a letter, a comment, and ask an item to go on the on the agenda. Because again, we're unlike the town council where there's kind of a 15-minute public comment section of the meeting. Well, I guess we can very happy to answer the question when we conclude our meeting. Very happy to do that. Casey, with that, we're done? Good. At this point in time, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
So, the second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions, we're adjourned.